Welcome to the Kiosk webinar. During today's webinar, you're going to be learning how to use the Kiosk feature of the Open Dental program to have your patients complete forms electronically within your office. I'll be showing you the processes for your office staff, as well as demonstrating what the patient will see and do. And by the end of today's webinar, you should be able to place a computer into Kiosk Mode, close out of Kiosk Mode, add a password to the Kiosk feature, know how to select forms for upload to the kiosk, know how to launch the kiosk manager, know how to upload the selected forms to the kiosk, understand what the patient will see and do within the kiosk, know where to find completed forms, and have a basic understanding of how to import data from completed forms. So what is the kiosk feature of the Open Dental program? The kiosk is basically a feature that allows you to have your patients complete and sign any necessary paperwork electronically right within the dental office, and then you have the ability to import that data right into the patient's chart. Reasons why many offices use the kiosk would be to save staff time. Using the kiosk, you're going to have less manual entry of patient data and no scanning of those paper forms. You're going to eliminate data entry errors because you're going to import most of your data directly into the patient's chart right from the form. And you're also going to eliminate those paper forms that you're giving to the patient. So if you're trying to go paperless, the kiosk is the way to go. And the types of forms that offices utilize the kiosk are for those registration forms, medical histories, consents, financial policies, HIPAA acknowledgement, you name it, you can create the form in Open Dental and have the patient fill those out electronically. Keep in mind, though, that if you want patients to fill out information via a website and submit forms to you, that would be our web forms feature, and that is not going to be covered in today's webinar. So let's move on to what needs to be done before you even use the kiosk in Open Dental. The first item you're going to want to do is decide what computer you're going to use in your office. Many offices will use either a desktop that's stationary somewhere in a secluded area of the office or the waiting room that the patient can go sit at, or they'll use a tablet or a laptop. Either way, the computer must meet the basic requirements for running the Open Dental program, which you're going to find on our website here. We have a full list of those requirements. One of the key things you're going to want is that the computer must be able to run a full version of the Windows operating system. So you're not going to want devices that run the Windows 8 RT, and additionally, you're not going to be able to use the iPads or Android devices. And beyond the basic requirements for any computer to run the Open Dental program, if you are considering using a tablet PC as your kiosk, there's a couple of additional key points that you're going to want to consider, and we do have those listed out here on our website before using your tablet PC as the kiosk. And things you're going to want to consider are the screen size of the tablet, whether to use the on-screen keyboard or get a small portable keyboard that can be plugged in. Our recommendation is to use an external keyboard that you plug in. And keeping in mind that tablets are small and could be lost or stolen or misplaced, you may want to consider using a notebook or a small laptop that's a little bigger for a mobile type of computer that you would give to the customer if you're not going to have them sit at a kiosk or at a desktop. Beyond the computer itself that you're going to use, before you use the kiosk feature, you need to have the forms prepared that the patient is going to be using. So you may already have forms that you use in your office that are in a paper format, but those forms need to be converted into the Open Dental Sheets framework. The Open Dental program does have some generic forms included that you're going to see listed here. but many offices want to use the forms that they already have. If that's what you're wanting to use, you can go ahead and create your own forms. You can watch our Sheets webinars for a little instruction on how to create those forms yourself, or you can have Open Dental's graphic designer convert your existing forms into these sheets. And if you're interested in doing that, just call our office to request a quote. We'll go ahead and close out of here. Once you have your forms created and they're ready to go, you can then begin using the kiosk feature. For my webinar today, I'm going to use the forms that are already included with the Open Dental program. I'm also going to be switching between two computers, so I'll be switching over to the kiosk computer and then back to my main computer that I'm going to use to manage the kiosk. So to start with, let's go ahead and switch over to my kiosk computer. And over here on my kiosk computer, the first thing I'm going to do is you would start the Open Dental program. I've already done that. And then I want to put this into the kiosk mode. So I'm going to click on the Tools menu, and I'm just going to come right down to Kiosk, and I'm going to click this button. And now this computer is in kiosk mode. The kiosk will take up the full screen. There's no visible buttons that the patient's going to see to be able to exit. If you do need to exit out of the kiosk, down in the lower right corner, you are going to have a hidden button that you will be able to click if you know where it is. So down here in the lower right. Additionally, before I click that, you can add a password so that if the patient accidentally finds this button and clicks it accidentally, it will prompt them to enter a password before it can actually close the kiosk. But I'm going to go ahead and click this and show you what happens when you close out of the kiosk. So I just clicked down there, and what happened was it closed the kiosk. It also closed the Open Dental program itself. And this is a HIPAA compliant feature of the kiosk, which ensures that if the patient does somehow close the kiosk, the patient's not going to be able to just be in the Open Dental program and view other people's protected health information. So let's go ahead and start our kiosk back up real quick. And additionally, I recommend if you're going to be using a computer for a kiosk that you set up a user login that is specifically for the kiosk. And this user should have a password, and it should have very few rights, if any, in the Open Dental program. So I'm going to go ahead and log back in as my kiosk user. And when I click OK, what you're going to see is that my user gets an error that says you don't have permission to use any of the modules. That's okay. The only permission I need to run the kiosk is the permission to edit sheets. So I'm going to go ahead and reopen the kiosk. I'll relaunch it. So Tools and Kiosk. So now this computer is back in kiosk mode and waiting for the receptionist to send those forms to it. So this is what the patient might see if you haven't already loaded the forms. Let's go ahead and switch back to my other computer so that I can show you how to load those forms. Okay, so here is our other computer. And the first thing we're going to do is we need to select the forms for the patient. So I'm going to go ahead and start with selecting the patient down here. I've got my new patient coming in that's going to need to fill out forms. The other way you can do it is if they don't have an appointment, is you can hit the select patient and search for that patient as you normally would. But once your patient is selected, you can see that up on the title bar up here at the top. You can then come to the Forms button within the Open Dental program. In here, if the patient had filled out forms in the past, you would see those listed here. I have a new patient, so I am going to click Add. Either way, you will click Add, and you're going to highlight the form or forms that you want your patient to fill out. So I can highlight multiple forms. If I had forms that were not right next to each other, I could hold the Control key down on my keyboard while I select the various forms that I want. Once I'm satisfied with the forms that I've selected and know that these are the ones I want, I hit the To Kiosk button on the right, and this is going to populate them into this forms grid. You're going to notice that these forms have a number in the kiosk column. This indicates to me that they are queued and ready for me to upload to a kiosk. From here, from this window, what I can do is I can double click if I want to delete. Maybe I decided I didn't want to do the medical history form. I can use the delete button down here in the lower right to go ahead and delete that form from my kiosk queue. If I want to reorder these, so the numbers that show here are the order that they're going to be presented to the patient, I can simply double click on the form and come over to the Show Order in Kiosk and change this. So if I want this to be the last form that the patient is presented with, I can click OK, and maybe I want this HIPAA form to be the first form that they see. So I can change that to 1 and click OK. And now I've reordered my forms for the kiosk. Again, once I'm satisfied with the forms I've chosen and the order that they're going to show in, I can hit the Close button down in the lower right to close out of this window. Now, just selecting those forms does not actually send them to the kiosk. We have to take this a step further to upload the forms. And we're going to go to the Tools menu, and we're going to come to the Kiosk Manager. This is where we're going to be presented with our list of active kiosks. So if I had more than one computer sitting in kiosk mode, they would show here. And if there was a patient filling out forms, I would see the patient name listed here. On the far right, I'm going to see the current patient that I just selected forms for. I need to verify that this is the correct patient. These are the correct forms. Once I've done that, I can click Load Patient after I'd made sure to select the proper kiosk if you have more than one. Just a single click to select, and then Load Patient, and that will populate this patient's forms directly to the kiosk. And in a moment, we're going to switch over to that other computer, and you're going to see what the patient is seeing now that I've loaded those forms. Before we do that, though, a couple of other tasks that can be done in here is you can clear the patient by hitting Clear Patient, and this will basically remove them from the kiosk. I can reload that patient back over to my kiosk by using that Load Patient button again. The other thing I can do down here is to set a password for my kiosk. So if I want to indicate that if my patient were to accidentally find my hidden button to close the kiosk, they'd have to enter a password, I can add that password right here. Once you have loaded those forms in, you can go ahead and close this window and continue working in the Open Dental program as you normally would while the patient fills out those forms. You don't have to stay in the Kiosk Manager. Now let's go ahead and switch to my other computer so that we can see what the patient is seeing. So on this computer in the Kiosk mode, it has popped up the first sheet that I wanted my patient to see, the first form, and this is my HIPAA Notice of Privacy policies here. The patient can sign this form, and once they're done, click OK. They're presented with the next form in order, and they can complete that as well. Okay, and then we're shown the final form here. Now, I'm not going to fill out everything on this form, but you'll notice that some basic patient information has been brought in on the form based on what was already filled out in my system. This is where the patient can correct any data, add data as needed. Maybe they found that you had their date of birth input incorrectly and it really should be December 11th. They can update that here. They're married. They can put in whatever information they have. And like I said, I'm not going to go through and fill everything out, but I will fill out some of these fields. Once they're satisfied with how this information looks, they will then click OK. And then they're going to see this here where they can go back and double click to edit if they realized, oh, I forgot to add information or I put the wrong information in. Whatever they need to do, they can add their more information. If it is a form that they had signed, they could unlock the form, be able to make changes as needed, and then they would have to re-sign by clearing out that signature, re-signing and clicking OK. Once the patient is satisfied that they have completed those forms to the best of their ability, they can press the Done button. And then this computer is put back into kiosk mode where it can just stay like that until you're ready to have the next patient fill out forms. And at this time, if this was a tablet or a laptop, the patient would return the computer to you and it would just sit there and wait for the next patient. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and switch back to our other computer one last time so that we can go through the process of finding those forms now that they're filled out and importing the data from them. So making sure again that you have the right patient selected, you'll come back to the Forms button. And in here you're going to see those forms that we sent to the kiosk. They no longer have a number here. That indicates to us that these are completed forms. If we want to view the information that's on the form, we can just double click on any of these forms in here and see the information. If we want to import the information from the form, like this registration form, then we need to single click to highlight it and hit the import button down at the bottom. This is going to bring us to the sheet import screen. And here you're going to see, first of all, the field name that the patient filled out. And then the current value is going to show us what we already have in our Open Dental database. The entered value is the information that the patient entered for the given field on the sheet that they were presented with. So if you recall, we added a middle initial, we changed the position from single to married, we corrected the birth date, we added some phone number and email information, and also a referral source. The third column is going to show you what the import value would be. So if they're different, if the entered value is different than the current value, it's going to automatically say, I want to import this information, and it'll show you that with an X in the Do Import column. There may be fields like the referred value where you didn't have that originally in the database. The patient entered a name, and Open Dental needs you to help it to find the correct information. So it'll say double click to pick. We can go ahead and do that. It will give us a list of our referral sources in this case. If you don't see the referral source there, you can definitely add them on the fly as you go. And I'm going to say this is an existing patient, and I will search for John Doe in my database and say OK, and OK. And now I have matching information. So I can actually import and do the import on this field. So anytime you see that double click to pick, it's just asking you to either find the data in your database or add the data in because it's not finding the matching information. Once I'm pleased with what I'm going to import and the data contained there, I can go ahead and hit the import button. And I'll click OK to that done. And we can close out of this forms window. And if we go to the patient's family module in this case, since it was a registration form, I'm going to see that all of the data that was entered is now included in the patient's demographic information. So even that corrected date of birth that I had in my database as December 12th is now December 11th. And that saved me a lot of entry time. So aside from using the Forms button at the top to review any patient forms, in the database, you're also going to find that same information in the patient's account module. You will see the sheets that they filled out. So if we double click on them, we can view them here. We can't do the import from here. If we go to the chart module, we also see those patient sheets. So again, we can view, but we can't import from here. If you do need to import, you do have to go up to the Forms button and initiate the import process from within there. With that, I've reached the conclusion of today's webinar. If there were questions that you have that I didn't address in my webinar, please feel free to call our support line at 503-363-5432, or you can always refer to our online user manual at www.opendental.com.